हम जिन्हें रस्म दुआ याद नहीं, हम जिन्हें सोज़े मोहब्बत के सिवा कोई बुत कोई खुदा याद नहीं। आप सबका बहुत शुक्रिया कि आज के ख़ास मौके पे T2F आप तशरीफ़ लाए। ख़ास मौका क्योंकि वो जो कि हमें सोज़े मोहब्बत सिखाते सिखाते हमसे जुदा हो गई, लेकिन T2F की शक्ल पे एक ऐसा इदारा उन्होंने तश्कील किया कि मोहब्बत का पैगाम जो है वो मुस्तकिल जारी है और सबीन महमूद जो हैं वो हमेशा हमारे दिलों में अमर हैं। ऊपर हमारा कैफ़े मुस्तकिल खुला रहेगा। ये कुछ चीज़ें मुझे शुरू में कहनी होती हैं जो सबीन के ज़माने से ही चली आ रही हैं और मुझे विरसे पे मिली हैं, तो उनको मैं दोहराता जाता हूँ। ऊपर हमारा कैफ़े रेस्टोरेंट खुला है, अगर कोई भी कुछ ऑर्डर करना चाहे तो कर सकता है। यहाँ से नीचे से भी हमारा डोनेशन बॉक्स वहाँ पे है, अगर कुछ वहाँ पे कोई डोनेट करना चाहे तो प्लीज़ डू सो। आज का प्रोग्राम है मेंटल हेल्थ इन आवर ओन वर्ड्स, और प्रोग्राम के बाद जो भी रुकना चाहे और सबीन की याद में कुछ कहना चाहे या कुछ गाना चाहे तो ज़रूर रुकिएगा। हमारे यहाँ तो रिवाज है मज़ारों पे कि जो डेथ एनिवर्सरी होती है वो एक खुशी का मौका होता है। क्यों? क्योंकि हमारे मज़ारों पे यकीन रखा जाता है कि अगर कोई इंसान, कोई ऐसा शख्स है जिसने एक भरपूर सच्चाई और मोहब्बत के साथ ज़िंदगी बसर की है तो फिर वो अमर होता है और फिर जो है वो सिर्फ़ एक हमसे पर्दा नशी हो जाता है, लेकिन वो कभी मरता नहीं है। तो इसी तरीके से सबीन को हम ज़ाहिर है आंसुओं के साथ भी लेकिन खुशी के साथ भी हमेशा हम याद रखते हैं। मैं दावत देता हूँ फ़ायज़ा मुश्ताक को कि आज का प्रोग्राम शुरू करें। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
Thank you, Areeb, and thank you, T2F, for hosting us, for letting us use this space. मेरा नाम फ़ायज़ा मुश्ताक है, as Areeb said, and I am one of the group of people who helped organize today's event. हम सब लोग जो हैं, हम सब का ताल्लुक in some way or the other, we work with young people. कोई यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ाता है, कोई स्कूल में पढ़ाता है, कोई trained mental health professionals हैं, and out of all of the things which motivate us, one of the most important ones is the memory and the inspiration of Sabeen, who, as anyone who knew her knows, cared especially deeply about young people, Naujawan log, right? And cared a lot about giving them opportunities for expressing themselves, enabling them. So it's in that spirit that today's event is the launch of a larger initiative. And that initiative is all about creating opportunities, creating structures, creating venues where everyone, but especially young people, can find ways to talk openly about mental health, their mental well-being, to express themselves, to talk, to acknowledge, and to seek help if need be. And as time goes on, hopefully we'll be announcing a range of such initiatives. आज का event भी इसी spirit में है. So we have, and I will shortly hand over to our moderator. But आज की conversation भी यही है कि we'll hear from our guests who have been open in talking about the issues of mental well-being and mental health. But then we also want to hear from anyone else who wants to contribute to the discussion. अगर कोई बोलना चाहे तो वो बोल सकता है, but we also have paper and pencils which we can circulate. अगर किसी ने लिखना है, any question, any comment, any thought which you want to express, we can do that. And we also have, in addition to this wonderful panel, we also have two of our mental health professionals who are here who can contribute to the conversation. So with that, let me hand over to our moderator, Sanam Maher, who's a brilliant journalist and author, and she'll introduce our guests. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Faiza, and thank you, Arib. Thank you all for being here today. I'm really grateful to the organizers for doing something like this on Sabeen's death anniversary, for including us on this day, and for T2F for having us here. Thank you, Hajra and Adnan, for also being here. I think this is a difficult topic to talk about. They've been very honest about it. They've been really open, all for the sake of having conversations and to start up a dialogue about this. As Faiza mentioned, they should be handing out papers just amongst the audience. The idea is that if you at any point have anything you'd like to share, a question that you have, anything personal you want to share, if you don't feel comfortable standing up towards the end when I do a Q&A, feel free to write your question or whatever you'd like to share down. And at the end, we'll collect the papers and I can read it out for you. If you're okay just standing up at the end, asking your question, please feel free to do that. The other thing, two things I want to mention by the organizers. First is because we're talking about mental health, we're talking about things like depression or anxiety. If anything comes up, which anyone in the audience, if you are having a difficult time sort of processing it, or you have anything about it that's worrying you, Homer and Nisha, they're sitting right here. They're going to be available upstairs for a little bit after the event. And please feel free to approach them. Any questions you have, if you'd like to ask them about what they do for yourself or for someone you know, please do. And lastly, the event is being recorded for T2F. So if you'd prefer to not be on video, just approach Arib or any member of staff. They'll help you out. And apologies for starting late. There was a lot of traffic and Adnan got stuck, so just blame him. Okay. So just to start, as Faiza said, my name is Sanam Maher. I'm a journalist, and we're here today with Hajra Khan. She is 26 years old. She's the captain. Sorry, what? Your Wikipedia is wrong. Yeah. Okay, she's 25. She's... Okay. Guys, this is... Okay, start. Okay. They don't want their ages, my mistake. They're young people, okay? Hajra has been the captain of Pakistan's women national football team since 2014. She's been playing football since she was 14, and she is the country's highest scoring female footballer. She's also a UNICEF ambassador. She is the first Pakistani player, male or female, to be signed by a foreign club. And recently, I believe this was last year, she broke a world record when she played the world's lowest altitude football match in Jordan on the shore of the Dead Sea. And in September last year, Hajra tweeted about her mental health and shared that she has clinical depression and anxiety. And since then, she's consistently, on many different platforms, spoken up about this. She's talked about her experience. She's advocated for greater access to mental health professionals for people in Pakistan, and spoken a lot about just removing the stigma around mental illness and coming out about it, especially as a public figure. Adnan Malik is an actor, a director, a producer. He's also a WWF Goodwill Ambassador for Pakistan, and most recently he starred in Cake, which was one of Pakistan's entries for nomination at the Oscars. And if you haven't seen it, you should. And publicly and privately, Adnan has been speaking about mental wellness, well-being, about his own experiences, and also very importantly about what it's like as a man to come forward about these things, and what it's like to speak about your feelings, about greater sensitivity or empathy, and just how masculinity plays out when you're talking about these things. So I want to start with Hajra, and I want to talk to you about, you said previously that you have depression and anxiety, and I wanted to start with just talking about when you started feeling like those two things were a part of your life or something that was happening.
First of all, thanks for having me. I hope we have a great session. So, so I've been playing ever since I was 11. I've been running marathons for Pakistan, and then, I switched to football when I was 14. I'm also on the basketball national team, and so this was a great training session. We're off to India in a few days, to play the South Asian games, and we had a great training session. It's 4 p.m. It's midday. Everybody's having a blast. Now we know we're gonna just go and relax. So we finished training, And on the court side, I just walk off and I break down. And I'm crying and I'm hyperventilating, and I knew what was going on, but I just didn't want to accept it. So it kept getting worse at that time. And nobody could understand what's going on because, I'm not a very expressive person on court, otherwise. And then I was just, it was something that had never happened to me before. And it kind of, I would say, scared my teammates. Except one of them understood, who was the captain of the national team, and sort of spoke to me. It's like I was going through something, but I didn't want to hear people saying, "Oh, chup ho jao," "Oh, it's fine. What happened to you? Is everything okay?" But I just wanted somebody to come and say, "I see what you're going through. Take your time and just see us whenever you're good." And that was actually I would say, my realization that it's time to get help now. I mean, I felt that I had been neglecting it for a couple of years before it actually happened, and that's when I figured that something was absolutely wrong with me. And again, it took me almost a year from that incident to convince myself and accept that I need help. Because when you're an athlete, it's being weak is an absolute antithesis. People don't expect it out of you. You don't expect it out of yourself. I'm working out twice a day. I'm playing football. I'm playing basketball as well. I'm fit. Nothing's wrong with me. And then why? So it took me a year to finally get therapy, and then I was clinically diagnosed with clinical depression and high function anxiety, which actually rooted way back. And I had sort of taken sports to be my sanctuary, and finally the day came when it happened on the field of sport at the same time.
So when you say that it took you a year between that incident
Yeah.
and then actually going for therapy or getting help, and I assume that's when you got your diagnosis as well, in that 1 year, did it interfere with your job? Or, you're the captain of a team, you're expected to show up every day, it's a really grueling schedule.
Yeah.
How did you incorporate that with whatever you were going through?
So I've always been a person on my own. So I wouldn't call myself an absolute introvert, but I just like to spend a lot of time with myself. And even out in public, I've always been a bit of a shy child growing up. And supposed to go to the gym, the team's waiting for you, and then in the evening you're supposed to train. I was in Islamabad for the last 3 years, and I was living alone by myself. So that was comforting to see that nobody can see what I'm going through. But then it was also like, I was in a straitjacket in a soundproof room and nobody could hear me. And, it was just, basically just close your eyes and put yourself in that situation where you're in a straitjacket in a soundproof room and you can't get out of bed, you can't brush your teeth, you can't cook for yourself, because I'm all about, working out. I have everything. The laundry said, great, I have to go to the gym now. This is post-gym meals and everything. And then it was pizza, it was leftover McDonald's, it was like TV's running all day, I'm sleeping, falling out of sleep, falling back in sleep, and I don't care if my phone's charged or not. So it was very difficult to get out of it. I got physically sick where the doctors misdiagnosed it for a cancerous cyst in my abdomen because they couldn't figure out it was actually psychological. The whole misdiagnosis went on for 6 months, and that's when I finally realized, I feel like I should now. It's about time.
And when you said earlier that you couldn't figure out what was wrong with you, and that sense that something is wrong, when you did get a diagnosis, was it relief? Did you expect that diagnosis?
It's like I was waiting to hear it. I knew what was going on. I could feel it. I knew what the symptoms were. I knew what was happening to me. It's sort of, you need to sit and you need somebody to tell you, this is what it is. Because, it gets really frustrating when you've been misdiagnosed, you're missing gym, and, you're missing trainings. You feel unfit because you're an athlete, and then it's just like, sorry, where were we?
That's okay.
This is what happens when you have a condition like this. When you're anxious and when you've been going through this, look at him doing this is also a sign, by the way. That's how it is. So
I was asking that when you
sorry.
got the diagnosis, did it feel like relief?
It felt like
okay, now I
yeah.
know what it is. Now
Yeah.
I can.
Now is the path. Now this is what I have to do. This is how much time it might take to recover, and but actually, like finally, I'm on the right track to get help. I've been in therapy for almost a year and a half. I've been on my medication for more than a year, and I feel great. Like way better than what I had been feeling then.
You had also told me that when you mentioned to me earlier that sports was like a sanctuary and a way that you dealt with this, and then something also happened with FIFA and with, do you want to talk a little bit about that and
Sure.
how suddenly that sanctuary disappeared?
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody needs an expression. A lot of artists, they paint, or say the painters, actors, they get into another individual, and they express like that. For athletes, if you feel like if you've made football or sports your sanctuary, that's everything. That's where you worship. That's where you eat, you feed, everything. And then the Football Federation of Pakistan, because the situation was so politicized that the FIFA sort of banned the Football Federation of Pakistan, which runs the footballing activities in Pakistan. So the national team wasn't getting any games at all. And this happened early 2015, and 2014 was my peak here at that time. And I had just become the captain. I got signed abroad, and I played in Germany, and then it all just it's gone. So when you don't have an avenue to express, when you don't have your sanctuary, you don't have your safe space, your mind goes places. Your mind goes places, and then you stop caring about why you started being an athlete, why you wanted to be an athlete in first place. And so when that stopped, that happened, and then I started going down the slope. I could feel it. I could physically feel it, mentally feel it. I could feel it in my emotion, mental, physical, everything. And then came 2016, where one of the Pakistani national female strikers passed away in a car accident. Shalaila Baloch, if you guys have heard of her. So her and I, we were always together. We were playing on field together. So we played up front strike. We were scoring on the goals. And for 8 years, nobody in Pakistan could replace the two of us on the team, right? So we were playing on the club team as well. And then she passed away. I clearly remember this was October 13th. I'm at the funeral, and October 14th, my dad calls me from Dubai, and he's telling me that we've gone bankrupt. Now, his office is in Singapore, Lahore, Islamabad, Karachi, and Dubai. This is his stuff, right? And then all of a sudden, it's all gone. So I lost a friend of mine, a very best friend, and then the next day, everything's a mess. I don't know whether to be upset about my friend or my family situation now. And then I was just waiting to go back to Islamabad so I could be alone. And then that's when I felt it real hard. Yeah.
Adnan, I want to just come to you now and talk a little bit about just when you started to feel like, because Hajra also mentioned like everybody has a creative expression, actors losing themselves in different roles, things like that. When did you start feeling like, because I know you were working at that time, and then suddenly started feeling like maybe you weren't yourself or things weren't right. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. But first of all, it's quite emotional being here. So I'm going to take a second. But it's also amazing how we've kept Sabeen around. I think it's, someone was, obviously we were talking about this, and I was like, she really feels very alive. So thank you for everyone here for keeping her alive. So it was, I was acting in Sadke, and also I'm not a trained actor, right? I was just kind of acting. I don't know why, it just keeps coming to me. And I kept saying no for a really long time, and then I was just like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then I got this kind of amazing role opposite Mahira with a really good team. And I remember while doing it, because I'm not a trained actor, I had to draw on personal experiences, but I didn't know, because I had to be angry, I had to have this complete range of emotion. And it kind of ungrounded me to the point where, because you're not shooting, you're shooting and you're not at home, you're eating not at normal times, you're sleeping not at normal times, so it just kind of debases you. And in that experience, I think I was really channeling some really trying to find different kinds of emotions that I haven't expressed. And in that process, and the writing was so good. I mean, if anyone's seen that show, like Khalil Saab wrote it about himself. So, it's about this like young love that never kind of works out. And I just realized while talking to you the other day that the character is in depression. It's not really been diagnosed, like it was never really talked about, but I was like, oh, of course I would go into depression because he's in depression. And so it just got to a point where I was just kind of, I was losing weight, I wasn't eating properly, I was kind of really lost and dedicated to this character because I also wanted to do a really good job. And I think part of it also was that the act of performance was always something that was that would bring me anxiety. So we have to perform on a daily basis from being young kids. If you want something and you have to find a way to get it, you're performing, and so when you have that, I realized, okay, now I'm performing, and I would like balk up in front of the camera, or it would take a lot of takes. So in that process, I kind of realized, okay, this is something. And then my sister actually was someone, she's like, oh, and a really good friend of mine, Maniza, they were like, maybe you should go see a therapist. And in that process, I kind of was, and there's a taboo around it, of course. Also, in our society, and this is something you mentioned, as men, we're not, we're meant to be very strong, where and of course, I mean, I have the greatest empathy and respect and support because I think it's a lot more difficult being a woman in this society. But there is now a lot more attention on that, but I find men don't really talk to other men much, and there isn't a lot of awareness of the pressures around men, and especially, I believe the highest suicide rates in the world are like around professional young men between the ages of, I don't know the exact number, but like between 25 and 40, I believe. And because it's kind of undiagnosed, because there's a lot of pressures of success, like a man you're supposed to do a job, you're supposed to make money, you're supposed to take care of your family, you're not supposed to be emotional, you're not supposed to cry, you're not really supposed to have any of these kind of, not supposed to be sensitive, I mean, one of the first things boys learn is que ladke rote nahi hai, which hurts both ways. I mean, the early genderizing. So in that space, it was difficult, and it took me a while to really get comfortable with my therapist, and to really be honest, I think it took like a year and a half for me to really get to the crux of some of the issues I was facing. But it just was kind of like, just crying randomly, or like feeling kind of not having agency over my own life. So definitely kind of an anxiety attack. And then I realized retroactively that I've had a number of these, but they were always never really diagnosed as anything else but being a freak incident. So yeah, but apparently my performance was good.
Yeah.
I think people really liked the performance.
Because you got really sort of a lot of praise for that role, and then you're starring across Mahira, you're in this show that's suddenly doing really well. Did you ever feel like, okay, maybe it's just the character, maybe I'm not really, like I have all of this going for me, things are really great, why am I feeling down this way? Was there any sort of confusion or maybe unwillingness to accept that maybe something wasn't right? Or maybe people even around you just saying, you have all of this stuff, this great stuff happening, all of this success.
Yeah, I mean, that follows me around a lot. I think, we look, I think if you're in the media, generally in the media, and you're doing something that's based on how you look to a certain degree, because I modeled for a while, it was, but it would make me feel so empty inside. So, when people come to me now and they're like, we want to model, and I'm like, I try to smile, but I'm like, this better be a platform for something else, because it's a dead end, like if you're really building, because it's self-esteem stuff. I think a lot of people feel like they don't get the kind of affirmation they want from their parents or their friends or their peers. When they're younger, they kind of get into show business a lot. I see it a lot in Pakistan. And so as I'm mentoring young kids, I'm always like, okay, listen, like, why do you want to get into this? Like, and create some, but to come back to your question, yeah, I definitely felt, I just didn't feel like I was myself. And then I forgot what myself is. And then I had to go on this journey to redefine myself, which is how I find myself here.
When you talk about, and I think it's so true that, when we're, even just from bringing up little boys or whatever it is, from that very young age, boys are told to behave a certain way, to not feel certain things, or to not talk about their feelings in certain ways. Boys with their friends, it's the same sort of dynamic. And it's interesting that you say that it was two women who suggested to you, maybe you need to see a therapist. Did you have that same experience growing up or as a young boy being told, don't be too sensitive, all these feelings, what's going on? Did you have that or was yours slightly different?
My mom's in the audience.
Yeah.
She did ask if she could come today. So I was like, yeah, you should come. I'm glad you're here. So, not at home. I mean, luckily I grew up around very strong women and, you know, sensitive male as a father. So I had this kind of really nice surrounding. But I think in school, you know, I think bullying is such a, you know, and if you're a little sensitive as a child, if you're a little more on the creative side or you're a little not as, and even though I was a total jock, but I still had this, you know, I was telling you this little story about how when I was at the school and I was about 12, 13, like all my friends would, you know, they'd be like pulling down each other's like pants and like giving each other wedgies and picking up someone and throwing them into the trash can and like, it's all fun and games and you also kind of feel like you need to be a participant. So I also bullied other people, you know, and like, and then I got bullied and it was like this power game, but often I would try to, you know, give my perspective. And there was a time when all my friends were going around just stomping ants. Like they would just stomp all the ant houses and like it was just like this anger that had no kind of grounding. And I was just like, you know, guys, stop killing the ants. So every time they saw me, it was like this thing they would tease me with. They would be like, oh, don't kill the ants, Adnan's here. Oh, no, don't kill the ants, guys, you know? And it was like this thing. But I remember like when I became a WWF Goodwill ambassador, I was like, well, that's obviously the natural journey. That's the path. I'm glad I stuck with what I believe in, and then ultimately you will be not rewarded, but you will find your community. I think, you know, early on when you're a child, it's very tough and you're very impressionable, and you know, kids see a lot. So I think, you know, a lot of my therapy work was going back and like kind of observing the kind of patterns and then coming and kind of, you know, they talk a lot. I mean, actually what's great about Gen Z and millennials now is that they do have a lot of these conversations around them. I see it more. I'm working in an ad. There's this girl here who's actually I just worked with who I'm casting in an ad. And you know, it's a Gen Z ad. Everyone's under like 23, 24. And I see that actually there's a sense of like conversation around depression, conversation around anxiety, conversation around spirituality. I think that didn't exist in previous generations. So I think, but also, I'm going off topic a little bit, but is that, you know, they're also surrounded by so many means of anxiety. I think, you know, cell phones and social pressures and constant need to kind of portray something you're not. So I don't know, I kind of...
No, I think and it's interesting because you were telling me how you went from one mode of schooling to a very sort of local Pakistani mode. And because you were a sensitive kid and all of the bullying and things like that, it starts then. And I wonder if it continues now, even as if you're honest about being sensitive or having all the feelings. Is it like, do people kind of have a bad reaction to that? Are they like, Adnan, you're such a millennial? Or I know you talk a lot about gratitude and how you sort of work through some of your anxiety. What are some of the responses you get to that? Do you still get bullied or not so much?
Yeah, I think when you grow up, it changes, right? And also like all of a sudden, the power dynamics change, right? I mean, it's, I get to be up here talking to all of you and the people who
crush
the
ants
people
are
who
not
are
here.
like bullying or not, you know what I mean? But I think it becomes peer pressure, but you know, I think you grow up, you develop your tools. I think it's really important to keep developing your skill set, you know, and how to basically cope in life. Because I think, you know, when I talk to my parents or like older siblings, life wasn't as, perhaps in a lot of ways wasn't as demanding. There were simpler choices were made. Now we're constantly on display. And so I think you need to keep updating your tools. So for me, you know, it was sport while I was growing up. It really helped. And then from there, it kind of... And then we have our crutches also, which, you know, there are things that are distractions that aren't good, but they can get you from place A to place B, and then you have to let them go. Then there was yoga, you know, then there was therapy. And recently, this thing that I was doing is from Qigong. I went away for a month and did this Qigong practice, which is a really incredible kind of wellness practice, an ancient one. So whatever it takes, you know, everyone's a different person, whatever it takes. But like, the fun thing is my work's going well, life's going well, everything's okay. And then you kind of avoid the people who don't have any reason to be in your life anymore, you know? You can be nice, you don't have to be angry. I'm not angry, I'm just kind of like, in fact, it's funny, I'm compassionate towards them now. I'm just like, because things change as you age. And so if you're not able to adapt yourself, you're kind of stuck in a hole. And luckily, I'm privileged enough to have grown. And if I can share my experiences and lessons with someone, then it's not about who wins, right? It's about creating a community of safety and compassion.
Hajra, I want to talk a little bit about when you tweeted about just having depression or anxiety, and when you came forward with that. I know when you started playing football, there were some members of your extended family who weren't too happy about it, and it took them some time to kind of come around to it. When you decided to tweet this, or when it came out, it was covered by a lot of places in the news. Did you get any sort of pushback from friends or family saying, why did you say this? Why are you talking about having mental illness? Or any sort of, was there concern over there? What are you doing as a public figure coming forward with this?
It was taken pretty well, except for my mom, because she got super worried. Now, that's mostly concerned. That's not, it's not that, oh, you're a public figure, you're known to be a strong athlete, what are you doing? It wasn't that. It was more of, how have you been feeling nowadays? You know what I'm saying? So it was very well taken care of. And of course, there's going to be negative stuff, but nothing from the family. I mean, there's going to be those who will be like, turn to Islam and like, pray 5 times a day. It's because you wear shorts when you're playing, it's happening to you. And you don't have a response to those people because they don't really matter. So when they start mattering to you, then that means you're in trouble. So just go beyond that. I feel like it was very well taken care of, like very well perceived by a lot of people.
And how did you feel? Like, why did you decide to tweet that? How did it feel that day when you did it? Did you plan to do it, or did you just say, okay, I want to do this?
It was actually, I remember it was World Suicide Prevention Day or Suicide Awareness. And there had been a few incidents in Pakistan in the past 2 weeks. And it wasn't even like during the day, it was just when you're in bed and you feel like, okay, I feel like I might be hurt now. I feel like I need to express, the world needs to know what's going on. And it feels good to express, but then to express on that big of a scale, because then the next day, what I'm kind of always holding myself back from is getting phone calls from these, these people who want to cover your story. And now it's going to take for Pakistani media to take it's going to take time for Pakistani media to get there, but all the calls I got from were abroad. There's The Guardian, there's ESPN who covers sports, and then, there's BBC, and none from Pakistan, except, maybe those who just share photos on fashion, lifestyle. I just felt like people need to, it's okay to be vulnerable at times. It's okay, if I can come and talk here at platforms like this, and, if I can do it on the radio at times, why can't I just put it out there for those who don't have access, or those who just want to read and move on, and they don't have to. So it was the moment. I feel like I was in the moment and I just let it all out, because I also felt like the Suicide Prevention Day was very triggering for a lot of people, and the same afternoon I was feeling very vulnerable, and it was getting to me is why I had put my phone away and everything, and then I just in the evening randomly went and I was like, people need to read this. People need to know how they're feeling. They need to know it's okay. I got 2 phone calls from, I don't know how they got my number. There's this man whose son is in med school, and he's on the verge of suicide. Right? This is in Islamabad. And he's like, can you please speak to my son? And he's not speaking to anyone at home. He knows about what you're doing. He knows about your tweets, but he just doesn't want to express it. The kid goes to therapy now. And that's when I kind of sort of proved to myself that this is what I'm doing it for. I feel like I'm privileged enough now to use football as a platform and talk about things that are not spoken about. I've done 2 TED Talks. One was mental health. The second was sexual harassment, where I'm actually putting myself out there and telling people that, no matter how physically strong you are, no matter how many times you go to the gym or how fit people think you are, you're going to fall down, you're going to trip, and it's going to be bad. So I feel like people need to know that it's okay to feel certain things. It's probably why they tweet.
And you were telling me that when you did tweet this and people did find out, some of the responses that you also got from, I think, younger people saying, well, you're so physical, or you're an athlete at this level, how are you experiencing this? And what were some of the responses that you got, good and bad, or some of the confusions that you saw people had?
Some legit confusions were that, oh, when we feel upset or when we feel anxious, we're asked to exercise and then we'll feel okay, break a sweat, you'll be fine. People do that, it's fine. I mean, it works, scientifically proven, it does. But then, being an athlete, being under a lot of pressure to perform at a certain level, and because, ever since a young age, like I was 14 and I became the top scorer for Pakistan. I mean, I wasn't expecting that, and then, at that age when it comes to you, you have to maintain it. Then it's just about how good I am and about just leveling up every year, right? So there's that, and then there's pressures of, if I want to be the captain, then I have to work twice as hard. That's pressures, and then there's social stuff social barriers where people simply just are like my extended family. Why are you sending your kid abroad? Why she's going to play in shorts? That's not how it works. It's disrespectful. So dealing with that, and then also dealing with the fact that I have a lot of eyes on me. And naturally, the sort of person that I am, I kind of shy away from it. I feel like it's now that I've publicly started speaking and, saying okay to video interviews and everything. But then there's two people, like I'm two individuals, I feel like. And then the balance between the two is it's kind of tricky where, people have a lot of questions. So yeah, being physically fit, you have to be mentally fit to be physically fit as well. If I'm an athlete who's good, but then I'm also in bed, not getting out for days. I've moved back to Karachi a couple of months ago, and I've only been to the gym for 2 weeks. It really it's in the next street of where I live. So I might look fit, I might look like nothing's wrong, but some other part of the brain is probably on fire at the moment, and I need SOS. So it's just how it is, yeah.
You actually had said something really great in one of your tweets, and I wanted to read that out. When you're talking about, not wanting to go to the gym or things like that, you'd said, the symptoms of depression often have a way of infiltrating everything, from the smallest, most unsuspecting details of life to the biggest, most significant aspects of life. Trying to explain this often feels like trying to hold on to water. And I thought that was so great, like having to explain either anxiety and what that actually feels like. Adnan, do you have that as well? Like when you're trying to explain what is it like to feel anxious, or to explain to somebody maybe who hasn't had it, or both of you are public figures, and trying to explain to people, because I think we also have certain perceptions. What does a depressed person look like, behave like, what do they do? And trying to sort of fix some of those misconceptions.
So I feel like every individual has their own way of dealing with the illness that they have. They might, and perception as well of what they're feeling. So for me, I lost what you were saying.
Just symptoms of how it just in your life.
Yes.
When you have such a crazy schedule as well, like you have to be up at like 6 a.m., be on the field, things like that. When you're talking about small symptoms and large symptoms.
The very basic symptoms, if people have been ignoring it, is you go to a restaurant, you've been thinking about it for the whole week, right? And then there's 2 options on the menu, and you're standing there for half hour, you don't know what you want to eat. Happened to me yesterday. My little brother, he's 9, we went out for bowling, and then, it's time for food. And I'm just there, and I'm like, do I want a Big Mac or a McRoyal? I don't know. It would happen. And even like when you're alone and nobody's judging you or anything, if I'm ordering food online, by the way, I don't order my food on the phone. I just do it on text, because it makes me anxious to be speaking to somebody and ordering my food, and what if I get stuck? Because I do start to I can't speak, basically. I just get blank. So I
think you're speaking really well, guys, right? Seriously, she's saying all of this, but I'm like, I don't know when this happens.
No, because now that I know the symptoms that I have been going through, I can I know I can accept what it is. I start to stammer a lot. I eat my words. I don't complete sentences. I will derail from what I'm talking about. I can't express myself. I've been attending these big, really important meetings for the past 2 months, and I can count on my fingers how many of them went wrong because I was anxious. Or because I couldn't express myself. Not being able to pick the food you want, not even being able to, I don't Uber because I don't want to interact with another individual. So I just drive around no matter how far I have to go. Not even a driver, I'm okay with that. Symptoms would include all you're all pumped up to go to this event. It was actually a very good friend's wedding, and so I went. I went 1 month. I'm practicing for the mehndi dances, and everything's a blast. I didn't go to the mehndi because it's just you can't. It's every individual I feel like goes through different symptoms, and you can't really. I can't express what I go through. Like I can't. That's why I said it's like holding on to water because maybe I'm bad at expressing, or maybe there's not one way to express it.
What do you do when that sort of stuff happens? Like, what helps? I mean, when you're talking about a friend's wedding, things like that, what helps?
What helps is knowing that the other person understands. So if it's my best friend's wedding, surprisingly they understood what I was going through because if I'm participating in the entire event, like all the weddings ceremony, the pre-wedding stuff that happens, and then I don't go to the wedding, there's definitely something wrong. I'm not hating on my friend, obviously. So just knowing, like, even if you know somebody who goes through this, just all they want to know is that you're around. You don't even need to ask them how they're feeling. Just make sure they know that you're around. They have your back. Because if somebody's going through something, you don't need to tell them they're going to be okay because A, it's not helping, and B, they're not going to be okay. It's just, for mental health, I feel like it's cancer 20 years ago, or like 10 years ago. There's no one way to express it, or there's no solution to it. There's no one way of healing it. So, yeah.
Does any of this, when she's talking about anxiety or when she's talking about her symptoms, does any of it resonate with you? Is it similar on any level?
No, I mean, I think, like she said, I think everything's a little, I've done a pretty, for me, where I was at, I feel pretty, like I've gotten the tools over the years,
Can you talk about what, because you guys also have like 10 years between you, and I feel like when you're younger and how you sort of process this stuff, and the older you get and the more you figure stuff out and figure out what works for you, what doesn't, it's really interesting to learn those things about yourselves as well.
Well, there was this really, I don't have it on me, but there was someone who, it was one of those, as either online or Facebook or Twitter or something, but there was basically like that if there's some, this is for the people who are the friends of people who may be depressed or clinically depressed or have anxiety, we keep asking people, hey, do you want to come out tonight? Hey, do you want to do this? Hey, do you want to do that? And they're like, no, 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 no. And then sometimes what happens is that the friend is like, okay, he or she doesn't want me to keep calling them and pestering them. But it's really important to ask them, hey, listen, I keep asking you and I don't want to bother you, but do you want me to keep asking you or should I stop asking you? And often the answer is no, please keep asking me, So I think, everyone in this room, it's like, I think everyone in this room, at some level, people have got some of these symptoms. It's not such a taboo. We're sitting here talking about it, but, everyone's got their own set of anxiety. Back in the day, no one really diagnosed these. They were just kind of part of your personality, right? And so I think I think as I've gotten older, so much of it is me being able to take care of other people also, and that aspect is also really healing for me. So I think that's where the idea of community kind of fits in. So I'm often like, my friend has got certain issues and everyone's going through some developmental issues at some stage of their lives. It's interesting actually when I speak to therapists who are friends, like they've had such an interesting journey, right? It's like, when someone, you're like, you're a therapist now. But it's like the richest kind of experiences because there's so much life lived. And if you can like just take positivity out of that, if you can, make it work for you. I know that for you, I'm sure it's a big healing process to be able to be here and speak to other people. So it's all connected. It's not, I think if you are left in a complete isolation, then, and I had a friend last year, we lost her because people just weren't around and no one knew because everyone thought her life was okay. So,
Yeah, I think it's definitely, you are quite lucky. It is a very privileged position to be. I think a lot of the stuff that we're also talking about when we say seeking help, going to therapy, like we realize that those are things that are not easily available for a lot of people, and a lot of the parts of this conversation as well. You have to have a lot of family support. You have to have friends around you, as Adnan is saying, who are okay with asking again and again. So I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, we're representing the mental health experience or anything like that. We get that it's quite diverse.
Just to add to that, I think the taboo around it just needs to change.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about that in terms of the industry and the field that you work in, and being a celebrity, being a public figure, just within the industry. I know that there's a lot of people who advocate for taking care of yourself, mental wellness, things like that. Is there a level of comfort to coming forward and saying, I have a problem? When I was listening to Hajra's, a podcast she did with the BBC, which all of you should check out, it's great, and Mahira was on it with her. And when Hajra talked about anxiety, there was one bit where Mahira said, my hands are starting to sweat because it's amazing you can talk about it, I'm not able to, but I feel the same thing. So is there a comfort, not speaking on behalf of anyone, but do you think just within the industry, is it difficult to come forward? Is it easy? Is it comfortable as public figures?
I think it's just a personality thing. I mean, I think most people don't feel comfortable speaking about it because they think that is something wrong, and then people around them, their parents, their family are like, "Bas iske bare mein baat na karo, shaadi nahi hogi," right? Like, I mean, it's for example, I mean, those are the sort of social pressures that we deal with. So, I mean, there are certain people who talk about it. Most people don't, and most people are running. Unfortunately, I just find so many people are running on empty, and I see that around me, and it's really. Now that I have perspective and that I have the ability to speak and we have the language now, the tools again, is that you see so many people are running on empty, and that's what's scary because they're working off of like, what is that? What is the stress, the hormones, cortisol? Like, it's just like all kinds of hormones are being released and they're not dealing with the core issues. And those ultimately, as you get older, calcify into illnesses. I mean, this is a big part of what I've really been doing with the Qigong thing, just figuring this out, man. It's all in your body. It's all how you stand. You're taking medicine 3 times a day. It's called food. Like, be aware of what you're doing. Like, we're also caught up in like modern capitalism and, desire and all of these things. But it's really important to take out time every day, do a little exercise, just check in with yourself. And I think that's not happening. Everyone's on a rat race, wants to be successful, and kids who are coming out of college have all these pressures on them. All of a sudden, that you have to get a job, or, corporate mein kaam karna hai, or bank mein kaam karna hai, or life banani hai. But like, I visited an office, recce, after like a long, wow. I was like, do people actually like work here? Like, no, because it's like, unfortunately, it's kind of they're unhappy. Some places can be very happy if the vibe is good, but generally, like, it's tough. Yeah. So, and then the pressure to want to be doing your own stuff. So I think people have a lot of pressures and people don't really know how to deal with it. And then unfortunately, therapy for a lot of people is very expensive. Exactly. So that's the other thing. But then I've been advocating for this app for a while, Barood, and there's other people who are doing things. So I think, and also just finding friends if you can, I think, who you can just have these conversations with. And people who are uplifting and people who kind of can hear you out. So I'm just getting onto the healing part of it, which is what's really helped me. Is like, reconnecting with family also. Like, it's really important. A lot of one's neuroses, or a lot of one's anxieties come from that. If you're able to, grow up, be independent enough, and not be so dependent on them, and come back to them, with them, they're really open to it. It just takes that. It's just those growing pains, because I think a lot of our personalities are formed based around the pressures we felt while growing up.
So with both of you, it's really interesting when we think about different pressures. When you're talking about measures of success, it's funny because you have that as well. And I mean, you might have it in terms of being a man in this society, being someone who, okay, what does it mean to be successful in your field? What does it mean to be, you have to get married by a certain age, you have to be earning a certain amount, you need to have a house, kids, blah, blah, blah. And then you have it in a very different way on the field. And how do you guys manage these kinds of pressures and then feeling anxious about whatever is going on?
Before you start, I just want to say one little thing. So today I got offered to direct an ad on a fairness cream.
Sign me up and I'll write the script for you.
Yeah, we could do this. So it was really interesting, I mean, those are also, because it's money, right? It's like it's like easy money. And I thought about it for 5 minutes, and then I said no. But you know, those are also the kinds of pressures that men. But then it's also like, where do you? And the producer was like, why wouldn't you do this? And I was like, I don't think that these are the right value systems, and they don't get it, right? So you're also feeling this peer pressure in your community. कि पैसे बनाओ भाई, पैसे बनाओ.
Good stuff. No, I'll just add to the whole, ad stuff. I was actually offered an ad, I think, 2 years ago, only because they couldn't find anybody with naturally curly hair. So the wheat ad, yeah. So there's a hair removal cream where Mahira is, acting and starring, and उसमें ये होता है कि there's a couple of girls playing basketball, and there's one girl who's just sitting on the side, and she's upset. She's legit sitting like this in shorts, and you don't do that when we are sitting like this on fields, right? And she's sitting like this, and she's upset, and well, the whole gist of the ad was कि आपके हाथ smooth होने चाहिए ताकि आप comfortable हो जाए basketball खेलने के लिए. Sorry. And all my female athletes, this is Sanam Maher, I'm talking to Hajra Khan, and like everybody super mad, right? And then when I was going to the BBC podcast recording with Mahira, and they're all like, you better say this, and I'm like, no, but yeah, the ad that I was offered was and they wanted me on board because they couldn't find anybody with naturally curly hair, is why I was offered an ad. And you guys will figure out what it was, but the ad said "मैं perfect हूँ," right? Yeah, and it was I feel like it was nothing worse than, it was really bad. And so I was like, fine, let's see what this is about. I'm not into like these girly situations, but so my script that they sent was, so I had to say was, मुझे पसंद है ये अपना चिड़िया का घोंसला और मैं perfect हूँ, right? It's just, it's absolutely pathetic how or where these things come from. It's sad. I didn't do it, otherwise you'd see me saying मेरा चिड़िया का घोंसला बहुत सही है. But we need to stop doing these things,
But just to play devil's advocate,
Yeah.
the idea was to let other people, by using that term, to
Yeah.
subvert it and to
Yeah.
let other
Did
people
you do
know
it?
that it's
You didn't
okay.
do it?
No.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, why would that not? Why can't that be a positive spin?
Because
Though I'm just playing devil's
yeah.
advocate.
It's just not just whatever the script for the girl with curly hair was. It was just not one, but a couple of whatever these girls were trying to. It's not on them, but it was scripted very badly. It was like very offensive to a lot of women that I spoke to about it, or because then it's on the billboards, and I'm getting calls. Oh, you're like on the billboard, and I'm like, screw you, because they knew I was going to be doing that ad, but I didn't. A lot of women, a lot of men as well found it very offensive. Why do you have to say कि मैं perfect हूँ? When I thought about it, I was like, why don't you just enjoy the imperfections that make you who you are? But this is a very personal situation. But if you look at it from a lot of people, it would have made some positive, but I didn't hear any positive feedback of the ad. And also the pressures that we get is, so the best looking, the prettiest looking, the whitest girl on the team will get to be on the camera. Right? And I have not been about all that business. Initially you wouldn't see me. Maybe I was like in something where they really want to talk to me for my sport, for my game, right? But if you see any magazines, there was an article that upset me quite a bit, although it was attention getting on the women's team. It was the 10 hottest players on the Pakistan women's football team. Now this is a team where, and they were kids. We're starting at age 16, and the average age was I was 20 at that time, so 22 was the max. And these are most vulnerable girls. These are girls who are not comfortable with being on that article, and then it was copied in India, and it's everywhere. The 10 hottest girls on the Pakistan women's football team. Where is the girl who played in Maldives? Where is the youngest FIFA player? Where is the person who is Pakistan's top goalkeeper with the clean sheet for 8 years? Nowhere, right? It's just the names, the photos, and why they think they're hot to be on the article. So that's one of the pressures, and then that stuff really brings a lot of players down, where we see cameramen on the field and we know who's going to be talking to them, right? Because it's been so overdone, and they don't want. So to deal with that, a lot of coaches and a lot of managers started telling the media to just go away. Coaches started picking 2 players to send, to represent the team, because they want the pretty faces on TV, and that's something that a lot of athletes should not worry about, should not bother them, because we focus on how we want to perform. That's a big barrier, when the media is not doing the best job.
I think, I don't know, with social media as well, because you brought that up, does that, specifically with regards to when you're looking at wellness, do you guys stay away from it and not look at stuff on there or criticism on there, or does that bother you at all? Does it trigger anything, or anxiety, or? No?
It really depends. I mean, you have to be secure in yourself, within yourself. If you are, then nothing really hurts, basically. At times, there were a few triggers where sometimes it would trigger me, but I like to keep away from all of that, because it doesn't matter. It's not healthy criticism. It's not somebody who cares about me. It's not somebody who cares about how well I do in life. It's just somebody who wants to make your life miserable. Just the keyboard jihazis and us,
I think when we're talking about, and especially when people come forward online or on social media and they're public figures and they share a story about something difficult, or if they say, I suffer from depression or something, I think just as an audience, something that I've really seen is that we like to hear a nice end to that story. So we want to hear that something that provides closure, right? So something that makes us feel like, oh, okay, so they went through this terrible time, things are great now. And I wanted to ask both of you about your attitude and your approach towards your mental health. And do you see it as this is going to be a lifelong thing, and just as you care for your physical health, you're going to be doing it with your mental health? Do you take steps towards that? Or is it like, when things are tough, I'll deal with it then, and just as you would any other physical problem or illness? What's your attitude towards it?
So I've really hit rock bottom. This was 3 years ago, and that was the worst I had felt in years, right? And I'm lost. What did you ask me?
Your attitude towards it as a...
So, days when it gets really, really difficult to deal with everything is when I feel like I don't want to be around, because I've been suicidal, I've had suicidal thoughts, a couple of years ago when I hadn't started therapy, or when I was in the middle of my therapy. It's just sometimes, I'm going to be very honest, I don't feel like healing, because I feel like, I think to myself and I say, what's the point? What else is there left for me to go through anyway? If it's going to be bad, let me just sit on my bed and just, cry over it. Or why should I make myself better when, I might never make it abroad, or like make it on that team that I want, get to the goals that I want to, or it gets demotivating at times, but then something or the other happens. It's like, you see the silver lining, or I'll get a phone call and be like, oh, they want to train, they've allowed you to train with them for a few weeks. I'd be like, okay, there's still hope. And it could be like a moment thing. Like, today, right now I'm sitting here and I'm feeling the worst, and I don't want nothing to do with my well-being. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to eat right. And then something happens, and where you're like, okay, this person thinks I'm important. Somebody's looking at me right now. They're waiting for my next tweet on mental health or something. They're not saying it, but they're waiting to see how I'm doing. There's moments of motivation, but then it does get worse. My attitude towards this is that I want to heal, obviously. Nobody wants to stay in that. They want to get out of the rabbit hole, obviously.
I've just realized that it's also about, I think everyone goes through bouts, of different, like you get ill, like you get, there are different phases in your life. I think everyone has those phases. my biggest thing is to not be attached to it. That's what I've learned. Just don't be, like my now is just try not to be attached. And like the again, like it's very, like this is something I've learned recently, but it's so perfect. It's just that when you're dealing with the past, you're often dealing in depression. When you're dealing with the future, you're dealing with anxiety. So the only way to really be present is to be in your body and to be aware of your breath. And so those, and also like things like laughter, you know, it's such an important, like I used to think it was so funny when my dad used to love reading Reader's Digest, laughter is the best medicine. I was like, who laughs at a book? You know, like, but you know, as I've realized that, you know, to bring in laughter into your daily practice, to find those people where you can just be casual, you know, easy around. So for me, it's, I mean, I think that's life. I mean, I don't think it's mental health. I think life is mental health and physical health and spiritual well-being, and that's life. So this is how it's going to be. And as long as you're on the ride, you know, you try to keep going, and things will come and go. And you know, I mean, for me, like one of the biggest things about anxiety is often mortality, and I think that's the thing that, and I have noticed that in this culture we don't really talk about it. It's not something that we discuss. It's not something we want to talk about. Unfortunately, you know, it's around us. It's around me right now. There's this sense of, and so you know, it's like, okay, well, if people around me go, I still need to live my life, and so what am I going to do, right? And so, you know, that's given me a lot of strength, and and this gratitude practice. So for me, it's like saying prayers now at night, just, you know, but it's the gratitude is so important to be thankful every day. And it's different every day, so it's fun. It's not the same thing you're doing ratta, right? You're like, oh, you know, like today I connected with someone who's, unfortunately, her father passed away recently, and I was like, oh, and she's someone I've never met, but she's like a Insta buddy, and I was like praying for her because she just popped up in my head. And I was like, oh, that's such good, again, just community building, even if it's not a physical thing, you're doing the intangible thing. So yeah, I mean, my experience from myself is that it's definitely just, it's something you can constantly try to get out of, but yeah.
Okay. So some of you have written some stuff here. I'm going to get to that. And then if anyone in the audience wants to ask a question, I'll go through these first. I think this is someone who they like that you said this, Adnan. So it just has a quote saying, kids see a lot, which is great and really valid.
Absolutely.
Then this is a bit long, I'm going to read it out. Since you brought up Gen Z, what do you have to say about woke shaming and cancel culture? Not all harm is equal. I think that finding a good process is crucial, and we do a disservice to the survivors when we try to make something simple when it is actually complex. I'm not telling about men abusing positions of power. I'm talking about women and gender non-conforming people against whom shame is weaponized on the internet. So in terms of even woke shaming or cancel culture, if you guys have anything to say, or
what
any
is
part
cancel
of this.
culture?
Cancel culture is like on Twitter, if you do, or just in life, if you get called out for doing something wrong, and then on Twitter we say this person is canceled. So anytime they'll say anything again in the future, we're like, no, you did this terrible thing then, we're not excusing this, and cancel. And sometimes it can be unfair, and sometimes it can be completely justified. Particularly when there's people who've done terrible things or abused power in certain ways. For instance, Harvey Weinstein is canceled, right? Like, nobody wants anything to do with him. So that's cancel culture.
So interesting. I have so much to say. But is that it?
No, go for it.
No, but
please.
what is the exact question?
So the question here was, since you brought up Gen Z, what do you have to say about woke shaming and cancel culture?
I mean, I think it's, like you said, I think the part that really resonated with me there is the oversimplification of things.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately, I think, you know, everyone has a process, there is a healing process, but you also have to be able to help yourself. So it's you know, you need time and you need energy and to not overly simplify things, but also some people kind of wallow in it. So you have to find your kind of place in terms of when you feel like you have kind of overcome something. But yeah, the oversimplification is definitely harmful. Just a little anecdote. Today on my group, I don't know, how public is this? Are we going on like,
Well,
am I going to get quoted in a newspaper?
No. So just in case, the video is
Who's the
just
journalist
for
here?
D2F, and then if there's people who are going to
But
But if you don't want them to... Yeah, it's fun.
I mean, it's a little off the record, but we're having this conversation because people are backing out of the LSAs, right? The Lux Style Awards, and like, so, you know, the group for our film, they were talking about it, and it was just really interesting because it's like, well, should we pull back, you know, because Jami put his Lux Style Award on the road today. That's one way, you know, there's so many ways, but I was saying, anyways, I don't want to get into it, but I was just like, it's tough, right? Like, when do you decide that someone is definitely a perpetrator? Unless you've personally experienced it, even though I'm all for, you know, then we're getting into a whole other conversation, which, but yeah, things shouldn't be oversimplified.
Also, yeah, just the topic that you're saying, I think deserves a lot more time.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I can't get into it.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to try to distill it in 30 seconds, someone's going to misunderstand what you're saying, and then you will be cancelled. So let's, you know,
Thank you. Thank you for saving me there.
So this is another note. It says, never beat or even slap your kids. Never say no for everything your kids ask. Create friendly environment for your kids. We should establish counseling centers in our city. Like this is a great event. Thank you, T2F. Yeah, thank you, T2F.
Can I add something to that?
Of course, yeah.
So the whole parental issue, it's not an issue, but whoever is a parent in this room needs to give their child the space and not do half of those things. Because, you know, when your child gets older, when, you know, the relationship matures, you do feel that your child is sort of, you know, you feel the distance that starts to, you know, occur. And you also feel like the child is not opening up to you, and, you know, you're all worked up and you're like, kya ho raha hai, and, you know, you continuously bug your child about what's going on, and you tell them to, you know, you sign them up for like scuba diving lessons, and, you know, just to get their mind off whatever it is. But give your child that space where they can get comfortable with it takes time for, I mean, because I know people my age at the moment, I'm 25, so people or my friends, they always complain about their parents not giving them the space to open up about how they're feeling. You know, so it's just something that I would like to, you know, sort of, that's what the kids my age are thinking right now, parents, so give your children space. It's very important, it really is.
Hajra, this one's for you as well. It says, I can relate to her on so many levels. I am a sportsman, not as big as her. I'm just a club-level cricketer, but something has happened to me. I cry every day. I haven't gone to practice since last 6 months.
I feel you, whoever you are. So the next step is healing and accepting what you're going through. So how I deal with that is, if I haven't been to the gym for 6 months, I finally put the gear on and I just go and read at the gym. I'm just going to be in that space where everybody around me is working out. Don't be in the way, obviously, but just make that first step of going out of the house and sitting at the gym, or just being around the gym. Day 2, you'll start to think that, oh, you know, now I'm coming here to read, maybe I should just work out for at least like 15 to 20 minutes, or just practice bowling if you're a cricketer, you know. Batting, you think you were going to sit out, so you sit out, it's fine. But just the first step of trying to heal, trying to recover, because if you enjoy playing cricket, if you enjoy playing sport, it's going to make you feel better if you start doing it again. You know, whatever we stop doing when we're really upset is what we need the most, except toxic relationships and everything. That's a whole new story. But make that first step of getting ready for cricket and just going. If you're playing cricket, it's a green field, you know, you've got the nets. Perfect place to just lie down on your backpack and just read. Or do anything, just go around, be in that space, you know, that's first step. It might take a week or 2 weeks to finally, for yourself to start physically involved. Just make that first step.
Does anyone in the audience want to do a question right now? Because I have a whole bunch here, but I want to give anyone else who wants to ask a question a chance. Anyone? Okay. So then this one, how do you deal with people you love and who love you being impatient? Because I've been dealing with anxiety and depression for a year, and I've had to hear, you are always sad. It gets worse all the time. You always need me to be patient and give you more love. This is a good person, honestly, with his own stuff, getting impatient at times, which is okay, but I still don't know how to deal with it. So anything you guys want to add on this, or? Yeah. Do you want to come here and take that?
So when people talk about that with me in therapy, I encourage them, be open about your needs. It's perfectly all right to tell people what you need. And that may be, I need you to stop asking me to get okay. And that can be a real pressure. One thing I will add, and the issue of parents has come up. It's one of the most distressing things for a parent when their child is sick, and especially when it's mental health. So there's a lot of denial, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, feelings of failure, feelings of helplessness. And parents go through their own process. Because as a parent, one's instinct is to help one's child. And if a child is suffering and you can't help, that leads to all kinds of emotional reactions. Amongst them, it could go into denial or pressuring the child. So any parent or sibling, or even if it's someone you love, be aware that you will have your own emotional reaction that may have nothing to do with the person who's experiencing distress, and keep them separate. Did I answer the question, or did I go off on a tangent? I often do that.
Do you want to add something for the cricketer here who left this note for Hajra?
No, I think Hajra was spot on. Just take the first step, however small. Just keep moving. I would encourage, that's what I always bring up in therapy. Take the first step, however small. I mean, you said 15 minutes, I would say 2 minutes is even enough. Just anything that get out there, start moving, however small, however inconsequential, start moving.
It's just, sorry, to come back to her actual question. What do you do if somebody you love is getting impatient with you having the depression? It sounds like depression, or not feeling better. What do you do in that instance if you can understand that they're getting impatient and it's all right?
I would call them on it. Say, this is not helpful. This is what I need. One of the best ways to do that is I feel, I need. Because no one can ever say, no, you don't feel this way. So you can tell someone, when you keep asking, how are you getting better? You can say, that increases my distress. I feel stressed. I feel like I'm letting you down. I feel pressure. I need you to give me space to heal. Because no rational person, now again, not everybody is rational, but no rational person will say, no, you don't feel that way. So bring your feelings to the forefront. I feel this, and I need that from you. That's usually a productive way to communicate needs. I feel, I need. That's like a magical combination as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks, Maher. And guys, they're going to be available. Humair and Nisha will be upstairs. So just any questions you haven't had a chance to ask, please do. Then there's another one. Please go through this. What are the most powerful remedies you have discovered through your time in therapy for self-hate, love deprivation, and feeling less than and not confident in myself? Adnan, you want to take this one? So what are some of the most powerful remedies you discovered in therapy? Or even Hajra, if you want to.
I mean, it's so heavy, but
Okay, if you-
I'll tell you a moment. I remember a moment in therapy, which was, it's really, I think if you can get to a point of somewhat of self-care / self-love, that's a real step in life. And I think it takes people a lot of, because we're also often told that that's selfish. So actually just finding the difference between selfish and self-love. And that has a lot to do with boundaries. It has a lot to do with your relationships and your parents. But I remember there was a moment where, oh God, so the context is basically about just growing up, because there's a child self that we all keep also around, and it's what helps me be creative. But it's also the self that's emotionally needy. But it's also needy because it didn't get what it wanted, but there's another part of me that's kind of grown up, and so we're balancing multiple versions of ourselves within ourselves. Remember, there's this moment where I was just holding on to my child, my own version of my own child, and I looked at my therapist and I was like, well, there was some conversation, it was the end of a session, and I was like, well, who's gonna take care of little me? And then I didn't say anything, and then I got this huge realization, and then these tears kind of came down, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna take care of little me. And that was a really big moment, because then, that's the moment when you're taking control of your own shit. And I think that's a very empowering moment that then delves into these other aspects.
Hajra, do you want to add anything? Or?
Yeah, there's not one. It's mostly realizations, more than remedies, because for me would be accepting little things that have happened or any major things that have happened. Because, when you're in therapy, you go down when you were like 2 years old, if you remember what you were doing. So it's really where you understand the connections made in your reactions, in whatever your reactions have been. And when you start to understand that, this point in my life is why I am this person today. And this is what I can do to, if you want to get better, this is what I can do to make this. Because if I do the same stuff, I'm probably going to get worse. So it's just little moments of coping mechanics, you could say, that you sort of realize you can imply.
Just to add to that, I think unlearning is a big part of things, because we've learned things a specific way, so we think our relationships are a specific way. Often, I find often younger people are angry at their parents, and it often just goes into the parent-child relationship. And so, I'm not a parent yet. I hope to be at some point. But I always wonder, and I ask my friends this question: is like, are you raising your child wanting them to be who you want them to be, or are you observing them and kind of letting them be who they will naturally become? And that's not exact, that's two extremes, it's never either. But I think it's important to kind of, to think of that when we're raising kids also now, because I think a lot of our, like the older people, we were raised in, yaar ye aisa hoga. You have to be this way. And then you're constantly, there's a pressure to be the person that your parents wanted you to be, but who you authentically are. I mean, when I'm mentoring young kids, it's always that. They're like, I want to be a cricketer, or I want to be a footballer, or I want to be an actor, but they want me to be a doctor. And I'm like, well, your parents want you to be secure. And they're not mean, they're just worried about you. So, I think getting into those, figuring out why the power structures in your life and the relationships in your life are the way they are. And then also not repeating those patterns in the relationships you choose, because then that's the other part of your life, right? And I think it's very important for younger people actually who are to have therapy or have some kind of a counseling practice, because actually those are the pivotal moments where you can really change your life, because it's like your parents are going to be in the past, and your partner is really who you're going to live the rest of your life with. So keeping awareness of that.
Yeah, I would just like to share something that I read online, which sort of made sense, because it's the sad reality, where it sort of said something on the lines of parents nowadays raising their kids. The way the parents are nowadays raising their kids, they should start saving up for their therapies as well. For the kids' therapies as well, because you're saving up for their college. Oh, my kid's gonna go to this big college. I'm saving up. It said something on the line. It was hilarious when I read it.
Really good, yeah.
It's like people need to start, saving up for their child's therapy with the way they're treating, that they're raising them. It's sad.
Therapy fund. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one, it says fighting mental dementia, ADHD, bipolar nature. Kindly discuss these topics. Reasons of depression in men. How sense of humor can help fight stress/depression. Why do we feel alone and lost of energy sometimes? Why do we feel empty in this beautiful and unexplored world? So I think in terms of the mental dementia, ADHD, and bipolar, I would leave that to, I want to discuss just these guys and their personal experiences, but Humair and Nisha, as I said, will be available. Reasons of depression in men, I feel like we covered that, or no? If you want to add anything. And then the other questions were how sense of humor can help fight stress or depression. Why do we feel alone or lost? Why do we feel empty?
Well, I think, from the male perspective, it's a lot of it is performance anxiety, right? It's parenting, it's the expectations. It's even like the images we see of what masculine means. I don't want to get into great detail, but like lots of things have changed, and so there's this pressure to constantly be performing, constantly be high-powered, have money, and you're losing your value system. So it's constantly a debate between value systems and sort of capitalistic gain, right? And I think and that leads to a lot of problems. And so, I think...
But also, I'm not sure where men are talking about these kinds of problems or pressures. I don't know if you have that within your friends groups or if this is a common thing.
I wish schools and colleges were teaching stuff like this. That's
Definitely.
really the level. And if they're not, I wish those conversations were happening at home, because there was a great article. I think it was in the Herald about the men from Chitral was it Chitral or in that area, who were committing a lot of suicide because their whole way of living was changing, you know, because they were used to working more on the land, but they came to Karachi looking for work, weren't getting the work, you know. And also like yeah, I mean, it's a varied thing. Anything?
Is there a possibility to create a community of young people who could be mentored to get support whenever they feel the need for help? Would specifically Adnan or Hajra help a young person if they sought help from either of you? So firstly, in terms of creating a community, I think a lot of what the organizers of this event, this is something that they're trying to do to build not just awareness and to have more conversations. They've got a lot of great plans coming up. They can't really talk about it right now for different reasons, but I would say this community thing, they've got great ideas about that, and they can talk about that further at some point in the future. This is just the first event, and mental health is their focus. Specifically with you guys, would you help a young person if they approached you? Are you available, like Twitter and stuff like that?
Yeah, I am. I am available, and actually, something I don't like to you know, but it's something I feel like I should be proud of, is 6 people, 6 random strangers have finally started getting therapy because they spoke to me, and because if people come to me, if somebody heard my podcast and they're coming to me for help or for assistance or anything at all, and if I just shoo them away, what message am I getting across? Whatever I'm saying online is all bogus. Whatever I'm advocating for is bogus. People will start sort of doubting whether I actually feel it, or am I just part of the campaign nowadays? How it's really working. But more so, it really helps me deal with my own issues, my own sort of illness. It feels good to accept what you're going through. It feels good to talk to people about it and make them understand, because they're willing to understand. It's like they would understand what you're going through, and whatever you're saying is probably something they've been through, so it's easier to convince them to get therapy, because the best thing you could do to somebody is to suggest them therapy. Because I'm not a trained professional. If you want to have a brief conversation with me, sure, but if you're seeking some serious help, I don't think I'm in the best place, so I would really leave that to the professionals.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's the same. There's to some degree of success, I've gotten people I know to go to therapy, and others haven't. It's a choice. You can't force someone. And again, I think that's something we need to talk about. It's expensive, and that's something I'd be very interested in knowing how we can sort of work on making that easier. But yeah, I mean, I'm always open to a conversation. But again, it's okay for people who do have anxiety, it's sometimes a lot comes. So I'm somewhere, and then someone just there's a lot that comes at me, and they want instant solutions. And I think part of dealing with anxiety is learning to breathe and learning to slow down, and also fine-tuning your question. I've actually started speaking slower. It's something I've actually consciously started to do, because I realized when I'm talking like this, and this is how I used to talk, and I should talk really quickly, and everyone's
I can talk like that too, so I can get over with it.
Yeah, I was going then I've been so nervous, because I feel like when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of space to speak, so I tried to fit in everything that I could in there, and now I just speak like this, and that will obviously, you're going to run into a wall, your mind is going to be active, by the way, little things, when you wake up first thing, don't check your phone. Just for an hour, don't check your phone. Don't get into your WhatsApp. Don't get into your, give yourself that hour to wake up properly. 1 hour before going to bed, don't be on your phone. Read something, do whatever it is to calm you down. I mean, it's just these little things also make a huge difference. So maybe you don't need to meet us. These things should be told, because I think a lot of the anxiety from today is honestly, it's from 50% of your anxiety today is because of this. Manage your relationship with this. My cat, and you're gonna be in a better place.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? I think we're gonna wrap up. Yeah, there's a question in the back. Oh, sure. Do you want to just say it now?
What to do if you are feeling alone? You don't want to meet anyone. And one issue. Okay. Hello. मैं ये पूछना चाह रहा हूँ कि जैसे आप अगर अकेले फील करते हैं, ओके, नो इशू, यू कैन मीट फ्रेंड्स, यू कैन मीट एनीवन, यू can meet your parents, you can meet anyone, okay? But what if आपको आपके जैसा कोई बंदा ना मिले, like आप एक टॉपिक है उस पर डिस्कशन करना चाहते हैं, like एक सीरियस प्रॉब्लम है जो मेरे साथ है, like मुझे जो बातें करनी होती हैं अब मुझे नहीं मिलते लोग, like आई एम हियर, हम एक पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक के ऊपर बात कर रहे हैं, like प्रॉब्लम्स के ऊपर बात कर रहे हैं, बट मेरे लिए प्रॉब्लम जो सबसे बड़ा है कि मैं अपनी जो माइंड में मेरे जो एक रेस लगी हुई है, जो एक वार है, मैं उसको शेयर किससे करूं? सो मुझे इसका आंसर नहीं मिल रहा. लाइक यू कैन अवॉइड पीपल, यू कैन अवॉइड द प्रॉब्लम, बट यू हैव टू शेयर समथिंग. यू कैन शेयर इट विद गॉड, बट दैट्स समथिंग एल्स. ओके, पेरेंट्स के साथ आप शेयर कर सकते हैं, बट सम टॉपिक्स आप पेरेंट्स का शेयर नहीं कर सकते. सो यू नीड अ फ्रेंड टाइप थिंग. सो इसका आंसर मुझे चाहिए, इफ़ यू हैव. थैंक यू.
Yeah. So I feel like one thing that we should talk about is he would be Adnan would tell us better, but men are so afraid to be vulnerable with other men because there's a sort of stigma still, but then they sort of make you feel ashamed of what you're going through because again, masculinity is supposed to be a certain way. So I'm not a very social person. I don't go out a lot, and when I'm going out, it's just for my friends. So they feel that I'm involved in everything. But obviously all of us going through the anxieties and the depression is feeling alone. If you do not have anybody to share it with, if you can write it out. Start by writing. If you like to type, just type it out. Open Word, put your phone away. This is 1 hour before you're going to bed, and just start typing. Okay, so this is something that I do too at times. The exercise is that you pick out an event that made you upset from the entire day, and just write about why it made you feel the way you feel. Kisi ne kuch kaha hai. Maybe they don't mean it that way, but you perceived it as though it was hurtful to you. So just, I would say, write it down, start writing it down, and then when you don't even have to read it, it's just write it down, forget about it. So you feel that by the end of the day, before you go to bed, you've expressed yourself. Kisi tarah aapne express kar diya apne aap. So that's, I feel like, the least you could do, or something you could start with.
I've been keeping a diary 13 साल की उम्र से, उससे बहुत फ़ायदा हुआ है मुझे. Like just to be able to write, और क्योंकि फिर आप अपने आप को सेंसर ना करें, ये डर होता है कि कोई और पढ़ लेगा, तो मैं छुपा देता था. बट एंड ऑफ द डे जो भी दिल पे बात थी, अगर आप लिखेंगे भी ना, तो वो कहीं वो ट्रांसफ़र हो जाती है. वो अगर हमारे अंदर ही रहे तो वो बीमारी बन जाती है. अगर आप उसको किसी तरह बाहर लाएं, दैट्स द फर्स्ट स्टेप. उसके बाद आई गेस, आई मीन you're right. I think if you can afford therapy, that's बहुत, there's nothing like it, and there's nothing wrong with it. जैसे आपकी, like if you've got an injury in your leg, you need to get it fixed. This is a thing. तीसरा, there's always कोई ना कोई होता है हमारे extended circle में. There's always somebody, आप पहले इतना attention नहीं pay करते, या वो शायद he or she is really nice to you, but they're not part of your circle, you don't hang out. You have to seek people out. आपको पता चल जाता है, allies मिलते हैं. आपने मतलब बहादुरी करके आज बात की, you're probably feeling better. Next you talk to somebody, someone will connect you with somebody. You'll find, and the other thing actually really interesting is that someone told me once, they're like, आपको वो लोग वहीं मिलेंगे जहाँ वो लोग होते हैं. It's a very basic thing. आप नाइट क्लब जा रहे हैं और मतलब आपको you want to talk about books, it's not going to work out. Like you have to वो जगह ढूंढने जहाँ, like for example T2F is a great space. And I think यही सबीन की legacy थी, और यही चाहती थी कि ऐसी conversations हो, ऐसे लोग आए और मिले. तो even I think if you stay connected to this place, आपका जो एक बोझ है वो कम होगा.
I think when you're talking about loneliness, this is a discussion that I've had with many friends, and especially people who are introverts. I do agree that writing is great, but I think what you're talking about is finding your people and finding your community and finding people who you can actually speak with. It's great to be able to write for yourself, to keep a diary, all of that, but honestly, I don't think our cities and these spaces are built for people to engage with each other, to meet new people. I think when you experience loneliness here, it's really profound. It can be very it feels terrible. And I know what Adnan is saying about staying connected on your phones and things, but something that I've found has been really great is if you are active on social media, especially certain platforms like Instagram, or I feel Twitter is a bit different in that sense, but I've found Instagram to be a really great space where people who are thinking about the same things I am, if you're honest on your own social media, they're attracted to that. You get connected with them. I'm not super social. I feel like most of my social life is actually online, whether it's meeting people who actually like reading, like writing, and I've built those connections over there. So I think writing a diary, doing all of those things is great for certain instances, but when you actually want to connect with another human being and have a conversation, honestly, social media is great. It's really low investment. All of us have accounts. We all do stuff on them. Start being more honest, start being more open on there. You will attract those kinds of people and you'll find your community there. And there's so many people that I've connected with on Instagram in different countries or even just in Pakistan, and then we end up meeting. And you'll find your community there. But additionally, yeah, T2F is an anomaly. This city is not built for connections in that way. But yeah, start online. It's the easiest. You'll find some weird people, but then you'll also find some good connections. So, yeah. Anyone else have a question? I think that's it. All right. Thank you, Hajra and Adnan, so much for this conversation, and thank you all for being here. It really means a lot today of all days. Sabeen has started to become increasingly interested in mental health. This was something she wanted to go on to study. It's the reason that we're here today. It's the work that's going to continue even after she's gone. And so I'm really excited to see what these guys continue to do with it. I'm sure you'll get announcements about it and support it in different ways. But thank you all so much for coming.